Good morning. I guess we'll get started. My name is Lundquist. I teach legal writing in the LLM program at the University of Minnesota Law School. And I'm here today to talk to you about active learning in the classroom and give you some tips, some tools and strategies that you can use to create an active learning environment. Before I get to the meat, to the substance of my presentation, I want to share with you my journey as a teacher to how I got to where I am today, which is using these teaching methods in the classroom and also standing here today and sharing them with you. So my journey started, it was about 3 years ago. I was teaching an employment law class at St. Mary's University. St. Mary's is another university in Minneapolis. And I was teaching employment law in the HR management course. This was a master's course in HR management. So my students were working adults, and we had class once a week for 4 hours, so from 6 to 10 in the evening. So it's a long class. And I did a lot of lecturing, probably like you do as well. There's a lot of information to share with students about employment law. So I finished class one day, and I was driving home down Portland Avenue in Minneapolis, and I was frustrated. Frustrated with my class and with my students. And you're probably wondering, what could our students have done that got her so frustrated? And what they did, it was this. They were on their cell phones. More than that, it was this, their computers. Using their computers for non-class related activities. And I consider myself a bright person. I always figure that I know that a student is using their computer not for class when they're looking at the screen and they're laughing or they're smiling. Because I know employment law is not that amusing. And so I'm driving home and I'm saying to myself, why are these students doing this? You know, these are working adults. These are people who are paying a lot of money for their degree for this class. Why are they on their computers? So I started to ask myself, what can I do about it? And my first solution that came to mind was, well, I'll ban computers in the classroom. It seems like a pretty easy solution. And I pretty quickly discarded that option for several reasons. First, many computers are useful. You know, many students use their computers for taking notes. And they use it for looking up something in class, and sometimes even as a class. Someone would look up something that helped everyone. So that was one reason. And then the other reason I decided not to ban computers is it seemed almost like a Luddite reaction. You know, almost denying the importance of computers and technology in our lives. In education, whether we're talking about upper graduate level law school, high school, even my nieces who are in elementary school use computers a lot. So it was almost trying to like get the genie back in the bottle, you know, say, oh, we can't use these. So that was quickly discarded. And really the kind of at the end, when I was driving home, what I realized I needed to do was kind of like, if you can't beat them, join them. So I started to ask myself, how can I incorporate technology into the classroom? Since everyone likes technology, maybe that's, you know, something that I need to do. And I also looked at it from a teacher as well. And I said, well, maybe my students are on their computers because the classes are boring. And isn't that my obligation as an instructor to create a learning environment where my students are engaged and don't want to go to Facebook or to email? So that was the beginning of my journey that led me to where I am today, sharing these teaching methods and these active learning strategies with you. And these teaching methods that I want to share with you can really transform the learning environment that you create in the classroom. And research has shown that these strategies have benefits such as increasing students' content knowledge, increasing their critical thinking and their problem-solving ability, increasing positive attitudes to the classroom, increasing students' enthusiasm and also the instructors' enthusiasm for being in the classroom. And these strategies can also help develop other important skills such as creative thinking, interpersonal, and communication skills. What I like really about these strategies, though, is that they can help you combat, not defeat, but combat the enemy of the classroom, which is the computer, electronic device, Facebook, email. and create an environment where your students are engaged and involved and less likely to be tempted by their devices. But, there's always a but, using these strategies means changing what we've always done as instructors in the classroom, and also abandoning, in part, not completely, but abandoning in part, I see kind of our security blanket of lectures. You know, what we've always done, what we think works. So that's kind of my story and my introduction that will lead me to the meat and the substance of my presentation. So my presentation will be divided into 3 sections. The first part will be looking at the definitions of a couple of terms that I'll be using frequently during the presentation, and I want to go through the definitions so everyone has a common understanding and knowledge of what these terms mean. The second part, I'll be sharing with you some of the methods and the strategies that I use in class and have found particularly successful. And then the last part will be some tips and ideas and some strategies that you can take and use in your classroom. So for the first part, you will need a computer, a cell phone, or some sort of a tablet. And this is the part when I tell my students that they have to use their cell phone in class. They're like, oh yay, I can use it and not get in trouble. So, and you're going to be voting. We're going to have 4 questions that will be multiple choice, open-ended, and a true-false, and you will need to vote on what you think is the correct answer. 3 ways you can vote. You can log into the website of Poll Everywhere. This is the website that I use. And pollev.com/UMNLLM. Or you can text first, UMNLLM to 22333, and then after text the response. Or you can also do it via Twitter as well. So let me get to, there we go. Okay, so the first question that you will have to answer, I'm talking about active learning, but really haven't told you what it is. So you're going to guess what you think is the correct answer. Which answer does not define active learning? Oh, can you see them? Oh yeah, the first one is, A is classroom activities focus more on students than teacher. B, teaching different than how most law professors teach. C, when students learn a sport in PE or gym class. And D, activities engaging and involving the students in the classroom. Take a few more seconds and then for you to vote and then move on. Okay, so the correct answer is C. And active learning. First, I think it's interesting. There are some scholars, researchers, people who say that active learning, the term itself, is kind of redundant and a misnomer, that learning by its very nature is active. And we know that from our own experience when we've been students, that it's not being passive in a lecture that allows us to learn the materials, but it's rather the actions that we take either before a lecture or after a lecture, where we read through the materials, make outlines, analyze, think about them. That's what really allows us to learn the materials. But nonetheless, we can still come up with a definition for our purposes today of what active learning is. And active learning, we can define it as an approach to instruction in which students engage the materials that they study through activities such as reading, writing, listening, talking and reflecting. Active learning stands in contrast to the quote-unquote traditional methods or modes of instruction in which the instructor is the more active participant in the classroom and the students are the passive participants or the passive ones. Okay, the next question is an open-ended one. Go forward. There we go. So what are the main type of activities used in an active classroom? And you can just type in your response, and it should appear on the screen. I've never seen this with so many answers. This is really cool. I've always just tried it with myself or with my supervisor, where both of us are just doing it. Oh no, they're disappearing. Okay, these are all great answers, and really you've kind of hit upon what the... Anything I do with my students in my class. And then puppy videos. Right? So the main activities are certainly collaboration, group projects, small group projects, or maybe a larger group project, paired activities, but also individual activities in the classroom can be considered part of active learning. And discussions, reflection, and all of these make up active learning. So the next question for you, let's answer this and then I'll go back to what I thought I'd say. So in an active learning classroom, instructors do no lecturing. And this is false. In an active learning class, when we're talking and defining what active learning is, we also need to think about what it's not. And it doesn't mean that we abandon completely lecturing. There still is a place for lecturing in the classroom. Does an active learning classroom mean that we do less lecturing? Yes. But there still can be and is a time and a place for lecturing as well. Active learning also doesn't mean that students are just set loose, in the classroom without any type of guidance, and nor does it mean that we, as instructors, give up any opportunity to assess or to grade the students' work as well. So, what I wanted to say before of the type of activities, the ones that I use in the classroom and that I'll be talking about today are paired activities, small group, and individual activities. I've never used any larger coordinated group projects in my classes. And the last question, we'll be moving on to another term that I'll be talking about, which is a flipped classroom. What is a flipped classroom? And the answers are A, blended learning using technology to deliver instructional content. B, instruction engaging students in the classroom with activities. C, doesn't require students to do homework. And D, involves team projects rather than individual assignments. Okay, it looks like B is going to beat out A, and B is the correct answer. No, A, sorry. A is the correct answer. A flipped classroom or flipped learning is an instructional methodology or a type of blended learning in which the instructional content is delivered outside of the classroom, often in the form of online recorded presentations, and activities that have traditionally been considered, or even activities that have traditionally been considered homework, are moved into the classroom. So it's often defined as classwork at home and homework in the classroom. The answer B, instruction engaging students in the classroom activities, would be more a definition of active learning. But for me, they go hand in hand. And I'll be talking about both flipped classrooms and active learning methodologies as well. So let me get back to my PowerPoint. That's the end of the questions. Here we go. Okay, so before I get into some of the activities that I use in the classroom, let me just tell you a bit about my classes so you know where I'm coming from as an instructor. So as I said, I teach legal writing in the LLM program at the university. Our LLM program is like many LLM programs throughout the country. It's aimed at foreign trained attorneys who come to the university for the academic year to get their master's in law. In American law, some do it in concentrations, business law, intellectual property. So my class of legal writing, it's kind of a blend of English as a second language and also legal writing as well. And my class is based on the JD legal writing classes. So my students are doing a predictive writing assignment first semester, a persuasive assignment second semester. My class is also based on a practicum model. So my students are learning by doing. So, to do all of this, they're told that they're associate attorneys in a law firm. They're in the law firm of Lincoln, Adams, and Washington. They have their senior partners of Jack Adams, Georgina Washington, and Amy Lincoln. And this is the website, the homepage of the law firm as well. And so they're doing assignments such as writing client advice letters, writing office memos, emails, a brief second semester. And they also do oral exercises such as mock client meetings, mock negotiations, mock oral evidence, like the JD students. So if you had asked me maybe 4 years ago if I thought I had an active classroom, I would have said, sure, of course I do. My students are learning by doing. My experience also, I was a teacher of English as a foreign language before starting law school, so I always incorporated some of that into my classroom and said, of course it's active. But when I had that frustrating ride home after the class at St. Mary's, it influenced my class at the U as well. And I realized that we have class once a week for 2 hours. Sometimes I was lecturing for 60 minutes, maybe even 75, because there's a lot of material to tell the students about the legal issue, if we're doing contract formation, promissory estoppel, or whether it's the persuasive writing, whatever it might be. And with so much lecturing, it didn't leave a lot of time for really a true active learning environment. So that kind of got me to reflect and change my classes to what I'm going to tell you about now, which is certainly a much more active learning and engaging learning environment for my students. So of the activities that I use in the classroom, the one that has really been the most influential and the most fundamental in changing my classroom has been videos. I've implemented a flipped classroom. So I've taken all of my lectures and I pre-record them before the semester starts, and they are available online and part of the preparation that my students have to watch for class. So their preparation involves watching, during the semester, there's like 8 or 9 videos that they have to watch, plus reading of cases or something from the course book, whatever it might be. And by using a flipped classroom, I've been able to free up so much time where I'm able to do a lot more interesting and engaging exercises for my students. I've read some literature about flipped classrooms that often says that the videos should be short, kind of snippets of information, like 5 to 10 minutes. And I've never really followed that. For me, it was more important to get all of my information in the lecture to my students. So my lectures can be from 15 to 35 minutes in length. And when I first started doing them, and this is a piece of advice if you're thinking about doing a flipped classroom, is get to know your IT department at your law school. Because the IT department helped me at first. I would go with my computer, and essentially what my videos were PowerPoint presentations with simply a voiceover. So a lot less complicated than what they were. And when I first started to talk to someone about a flipped classroom, she said, "Oh, Karen, make some videos." And I was like, "Oh my God, I don't know how to make videos. I'm not a videographer." But it's just a recorded PowerPoint. If you look at it that way, it's a whole lot easier. And I would sit down one morning and I would have a script. I write a script out for my presentations. It keeps me from rambling. And also I make the scripts available to my students. And since my students are all ESL students, non-native speakers, they appreciate that they can read the script as they're listening to the presentation. If they don't understand something, they can rewind it. And it's also good if there's problems with technology. If someone can't download the video, they can at least read through the transcript and know what's going on. So my first videos, as I said, were done simply with the IT department as a voiceover recorded PowerPoint. I've now gotten a little more sophisticated, and I do them on my own using the software Camtasia. There was a workshop on it yesterday, if any of you went to it. It's actually kind of fun. And I still do generally I use either PowerPoint or the website Prezi with a voiceover, but I'll do like little introductions where it's essentially me as a talking head, introducing maybe the topic, introducing a part of the video. And I also will take video clips I have one with a part of a documentary from CNN that I kind of put it all together. I started using music, so it kind of is fun to do. You don't need to get that elaborate, but the main thing about these videos is that it frees up so much class time. So this is really one of the main things that I would suggest doing. What I've also started to do with my classes is I create discussion forums on Twin. Most of the professors at the U use Twin as, where did it go? As their online platform. And, but Blackboard with LexisNexis, Moodle will give you the same function where you can create a forum here, and I will require my students to post 2 questions that comes to their mind when they're watching the video. 2 questions that they want to know. And they're required to post these questions in this online forum at least 24 hours before class. And it's good for several reasons. First, it is a way for me to ensure that my students watch the video. It's hard to write a question or 2 questions if you haven't watched the video. And it also requires them to reflect upon what they've watched. They need to come up with 2 questions rather than just mindlessly watching it and not paying attention. And it's also good for me because I have this deadline that they have to post the questions 24 hours before class. The afternoon of class, I go through all of the questions and I pick out those that I think are most interesting, would be most relevant for the entire class, and we discuss them during the first maybe 20 to 25 minutes of class. And I can prepare myself. I've gotten some really good questions from students that I had to do some research about. There was one about some Civ Pro matter that I just didn't know. So because I had them post the questions in the forum, I was able to do that preparation rather than me being caught off guard in class and telling them, well, I don't know, let me get back to you on that. And it's also good for students who are more shy. We all know that there's a lot of students who are very unwilling to raise their hand in class and ask a question. So this way they get their voices heard and do it in a less threatening format as well. So I found using these discussion forums a nice complement. Yes?
What's your typical class size?
My class size, it depends on the semesters. First semester I have about 20 students. Second semester I can have from around 10 to 12. Yeah, with a larger class.
75 or 80.
No, I know. Some of these, yes. I mean, you could, perhaps divide them into groups. Have maybe group A, B, C, and D. for this one, group A needs to do it 1 week, and group B, so you're not going through 75. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so some of these, there need to be some sort of adjustment for larger classes. And even 20 can be a lot, so I'll pick out the questions. When it's a class of 8, like I had this past semester, in some classes we would go through all of the questions. And I always spend, after my students have watched a video, I spend the first part of class, about 20, 25 minutes, depending, going over the video, answering questions, so they don't feel like they're just on their own, trying to figure it out by themselves. I don't want them to think that. And so I think that's an important time in the class where we can discuss the materials as well. Oops. Okay, the second one, this was my first foray into technology, was using clickers. Clickers are an easy way, and I'm sure many of you have used clickers either in your class or even as a participant in a class or as a conference. I use these clickers with Turning Point technology, but you can also use the clickers like the voting that we just did with this website, Poll Everywhere, where you're getting an instant response from your students to certain questions. And I love clickers for, first, it's an easy way to bring technology in the class. And it's also, I think, a really effective way. I remember the first time I used clickers, it was about 5 years ago. I was at a conference for the Minnesota State Bar Association. And it was on legal ethics. I still remember some of the questions. And how often can we say that about a bar association conference? Usually you leave and everything like goes out your mind. But it's something with using these that I think gets the material more stuck in your mind. And they're fun. My students always love using these, and they're an easy way to use technology. The thing with clickers and writing questions is not just writing good questions, but writing good answers, including the wrong answers. Some of my wrong answers you laughed at because they were obviously wrong. And those are not good wrong answers to have. Your wrong answers should lead to discussion and should be points that you want to bring up and should not be obviously wrong. I did an exercise with my class, and there were around 10, 11 questions that we went through. And my students got practically all of them correct. And I was like, my God, you guys are so good. I'm so impressed. And they said, well, Karen, it was actually because a lot of the wrong answers were so obviously wrong that we got them correct. So, it wasn't a very good exercise to judge their knowledge. Because that's the point of clickers, is you can see if everyone gets a question wrong, that's a point that you need to focus on more, that the students need to learn better. I have an example of a question that I wrote with, and this was in a class that we did on writing plain legal English. So revising and editing English to eliminate the legalese and to come up with good, clear, plain legal English. So the students had, the question was essentially, was a sample sentence that the students needed to read, determine whether it was written well, or whether there was a good rewrite of the choices. So this was the question that they had. So the sentence, can everyone read that? Okay, then I won't read out loud. So this exercise was good first because we analyzed this sample sentence. What was wrong with this? After we first decided that A was not, a correct answer. And so that led to some good discussion. After we determined that C was the correct answer, we looked and analyzed B and D for specific points that I wanted to bring up with my students. With C, with B, we talked about relative pronouns. When do we use the relative pronouns? Which, that, who, whom, where in English? What's the correct position of relative pronouns as well? And D led to some good discussion about stylistic choices, about legal writing, legalese. This one slide led to like 10 minutes of discussion. But it was only because I really thought about the wrong answers and came up with good answers and then discussed them. Because you want to have the whole slide lead to discussion points. And that's hard to do. It can be very hard to do. But well worth it. Okay, some other activities that I love doing. And this is clearly, mine is a legal writing class. So some of the exercises we do as active learning exercises are writing exercises. Two types are compare and contrast and find the mistakes. What I mean by that, the compare and contrast is my students will be given a sample memo of the same fact pattern, same legal issue. One is predictive and one is persuasive. So the students need to read through the memo, analyze the language, determine which is predictive, which is persuasive, what language choices indicate whether it's predictive or persuasive, and also identify if there's any language choices that undermine that ultimate purpose. So it's a good and excellent way for them to see a sample memo and sample work, but also to analyze language. And this would be a good exercise both for non-native speakers, but also for native English speakers as well. Another one I like to do is finding mistakes. So I've taken a student memo from a few years ago, and I put through some mistakes in there. Mistakes that were grammar, stylistic, word choice, citation, analysis, and the students needed to read through it, analyze it, correct the mistakes, and determine what was wrong with these specific things that they indicated. I like to do these exercises in a 3-step process. Depending on the length of the reading, I often give them time in class to read the exercise. If it's a longer one, that would be part of their homework, so they need to come to class with it read. And then they'll get 10 to 15 minutes, again, it might change depending on the length of the assignment, to go over the exercise, the assignment on their own. I think that's an important step for each student to individually verify their understanding and their knowledge. After they've done it individually, then they work with their partner and they compare their responses. Oh, I think this is wrong because, wait, no, I don't think that's right. And they have to, defend their answers and also see, they're developing their oral skills and also see what their classmates are also doing and thinking about these assignments. And then we come together as a group and go over the assignment as a group as a whole. So they get my input, my feedback, and we're able to verify as a class. So this 3-step process I love doing because it hits upon many means of learning. You get that individual verification, the development of oral skills, and also your expertise as an instructor kind of pulling things together as well. These type of exercises could work really well in other types of classes, not just a legal writing class. As I was trying to come up with some, I thought for a trial skills class, you could take an opening argument and a closing argument for the same case. Maybe in the opening argument opening statement, throw in some argumentation. Or maybe put too much of a spin on fact, so there could be some ethical concerns of the attorney, misrepresenting the facts. And the students need to analyze them, compare and contrast. For a contracts class, or for like a landlord-tenant law, or this could really work for any type of contract. You could see, for a lease, you could give one student a lease that's landlord-friendly, the other one that's tenant-friendly. They have to determine which is which and why. Or maybe you give them one lease and tell them, you represent the landlord. Is this a good lease that you would suggest for your client to sign? Why or why not? If there's provisions that are more tenant-friendly, how could they change them to make them better for their client? And then ethical considerations come in as well, and also contract construction. That, if you're the landlord preparing this, if you make it too friendly, too landlord-friendly, then would a court interpret it in your favor? So there's other layers that can be discussed in that as well. Another one you could do for any substantive class, and this would be great at the end of the semester, and I wish I could do this, but I don't have like a common content knowledge. You know, my students have taken, some have taken torts, property, crim law, but not everyone's taken the same classes. But it would still be fun, where you get a complaint. So you have the whole fact pattern of the complaint, and maybe 10 causes of action. And you could tell your students, okay, 6 causes of action in this complaint could actually be brought, and 4 cannot. So they have to determine which could be brought and which couldn't. Or you could do the fact pattern of a complaint with no causes of action. So the students not just they have to identify what causes of action could be brought. They would have to draft the little paragraphs, and that would also require them to look at damages, to know statutes. So there's a lot that they could do, and then they'd have actual experience and practice drafting the language of a complaint. Another one you could do, you could find a template on LegalZoom, Law Depot, some of these websites that have things available, or a template through the Bar Association, and the students have to analyze it and say, is this good? And I think that reflects the reality of practice. No one recreates the wheel. We all get templates from, whether it's something from a colleague or from a source like the Bar Association. And students need to know that using templates doesn't mean just copying and pasting. So it takes a lot of analyzing of the contract and rewriting it as well. You could take it from the website of Law Depot or LegalZoom and just do it like that, or you could change it up. Make it even worse, and allow your students the chance to get in there and analyze it. And doing it again as that 3-step process is, I think, an excellent way to approach these. Another one I like doing is part of a final project or an assignment. So my class, they're writing a persuasive memorandum of law second semester. So we took a class and we worked on the outline together. And I did this as a 3-step process. Students spent 10 to 15 minutes writing the outline on their own. They compared it with their classmate, with their partner, and then we came together as a class and came up with one outline that I opened up a shared Google document, and then the students would give me what they had written. I would provide my feedback. We would revise it, what's missing, how can we word this. And in the end, we came up with a final outline that the students were able to use for their final assignment. So this was good first for me as an instructor, because I knew that everyone would have a good final outline. Their organization would be good. The content might not be good, but at least they had a good outline that they could use. And for the students, this was useful because many, especially my students, as foreign students, they've gone to school, they've gone to undergrad, law school in legal systems or in educational systems where they don't do outlining. So they come to the US and they're told, oh, you must outline, and they don't know what to do. So by doing it in class, they get this guidance from me on how to prepare an outline. I worked with a lot of American JD students who aren't really good at outlining as well. And this is a good opportunity to teach them a skill that is transferable to other classes. And you might be thinking, and I used to think this too, well, why should I take my class time to do something like an outline that they should just do at home? And I used to think that until I did this exercise for the first time last semester, and I've totally changed my perspective. And I did think that. But I think the reality is that if you assign it as homework, first, not everyone is going to do it. We know that there's always students who don't outline. They don't think it's important, but also they don't know how to. They've never been really taught. So this is an opportunity to give that skill to them. And also, I used to have it was a part of the written assignment that they had to submit their outline as a Word document. I do all of my corrections via Word with track changes and comments. But I think we've all had the occasion when we get back a final draft with things that you say, wait, I told them to change that in the draft, and then they don't change it. So students often don't know what to do with the comments that we make in their assignments. Not because they don't care or they don't respect your opinion, but they just don't know what to do with them. They don't know what it means, they don't know how to change it. And not all of them seek out help. So when we were doing this exercise last semester, for me it felt like I was kind of guiding my students, almost like a private lesson, where I was giving that immediate feedback to them about this skill of outlining. So it turned out to be a great class and really kind of an eye-opener for me of how you can take something that was once traditionally homework and move it into a very successful classroom exercise. And again, with that three-step process where your students get a chance to do it on their own, they're discussing it, and then they're coming together as a class with you guiding them and providing their feedback and their expertise. The last activity is discussions. And I used to do a lot of discussions. I would put my students in small groups, and I would say, okay, and they would have the cases that they had just read, and I would say, discuss the cases. And it was never really successful. Some students would take 2 minutes to discuss the entire case. Other students would take 20 minutes to discuss just the facts. And the students really didn't like it. I wasn't satisfied. So now what I find, I still do the discussions, but I provide them guidance. I provide essentially comprehension questions that I want them to answer that specifically go to the points that I want them to focus on. It keeps them on track, and it also gives us, when we come together as a group after they've been in the small groups, we have some discussion points that we can focus on. And when the students are working in small groups, my teaching assistant and I will, we'll go around and listen and insert our 2 cents worth, make sure they're staying on track and not talking about something else. But this type of discussion, I think, is an important skill for not just for ESL students, but this oral skill, talking about something you're learning. I think we've all had the experience where we've read something, and like, oh, I understand it. And then you try to explain it to someone, and you're like, oh, well, why don't you read it? Then you'll see. Where you really, the oral expression is a different skill. So providing the students the opportunity in a guided way to do it can be really, really fundamental and really important. So like everything in life, there are pros and cons. You have to balance out the pros and cons to this type of teaching, as you do in anything in life. For me, the pros and the advantages of active learning in a flipped classroom greatly outweigh any disadvantages there are. What I've seen as advantages, as pros, is first, I noticed the first time I did a flipped classroom that there was a greater understanding of the material. This was about 2 years ago. My students were doing a fact pattern on restrictive covenants. And I had done the same fact pattern the year before. My students came to class with their questions. I hadn't done the discussion forums at this point, but they were just asking questions, raising their hands. And I was blown away, so much so that I wrote an email to a colleague of mine saying, oh my God, I can't believe how much better they understand the material than from just reading the cases. So I think it's something to do with both listening to the presentation and reading at the same time as preparation that led to a better understanding. And I've seen throughout the semester as well that there's just a better grasp and understanding of the content. Also, I've seen that students enjoy the variety. They enjoy that we do different exercises, that it's not always a lecture class. And that is certainly a way of keeping the students engaged as well. It helps with students not using their computers for non-class related purposes. I won't lie to you, I wish I could tell you that my students never send texts, they never open up Facebook, of course they do. But it's a lot less easy if you're working with 2 of your classmates and discussing a case or discussing some assignment. It's a lot more difficult to use your computer and to use your cell phone, whatever it might be, than if you're one of 30 students in a lecture classroom. So it has helped with the distraction, the enemy of the classroom as well. And so don't forget any. I like it because it also allows me to, I enjoy creating the materials, and that is something that I enjoy a lot. And in creating the materials, it also helps with my preparation. It makes my preparation during the semester a lot easier, because I have everything done. So, but a downside is there's a lot of upfront work, especially with the recording of the presentations. But once I'm done, I'm done. And so I found that it's much easier throughout the semester when I have the written assignments that I have to do that because I don't have the preparation from week to week, that helps a lot. Another kind of con or disadvantage is some students are reluctant to, at least at first, to really be engaged in this type of activity, especially if they've come from another country, another legal system, or another education system, where they don't do these type of things. And it takes some explaining to students. I always spend the first class explaining to students what I do, why I do it, and what is my teaching philosophy. So they understand why we're doing these activities rather than just the traditional lectures. And I try to get students to buy into it, essentially. And another downside is if students aren't prepared, it can create more problems. You know, if you have a lecture class and one student hasn't read, if they get called on, they simply pass, and someone else will be prepared. But if you have planned to have students working in pairs or small groups and one student hasn't prepared, it does require, you know, some juggling. And that's where I find the explanation at the beginning of the semester kind of guilt them into not letting down their classmates, is kind of how I put it, helps a lot. But, you know, it can be a reality of it. So some ideas and some suggestions for you. My first suggestion is simply try it. You know, try some type of active learning activities. Try a flipped classroom. Start with a video of 5 to 10 minutes. Start small. But I'd also suggest to try committing to it for a semester. If the first exercise doesn't go well, which can happen when you're trying something new, you know, don't discard it, but commit to it, and then at the end of the semester, you know, evaluate it and see how it works. Think of your learning objective before you design an activity. I have this great game that I came up with. It would be great if anyone teaches Civ Pro. I've got a really cool game that I'd be happy to share with you. And I loved it. It was so creative and fun. And I looked at it and said, you know, it really doesn't even match or meet any of my learning objectives. So I very reluctantly got rid of it and replaced it with the class where we did the outline as a group. And it was really a good move. And that's where, even though you might like an exercise, if it doesn't fit your objectives for the semester or for that class, don't do it and find something that does instead. If you're having students share writing exercises, think of how you'll have them do it. Will they have to print it up and, you know, hand it to their classmates? Will they email it? I like using a shared Google document, where if it's a smaller, since I have smaller classes, especially second semester, you know, students have to write like an introduction to their memo. They'll all have to post it on this shared document and then review it before coming to class. And then as an exercise, you know, we go through and analyze them together. But the shared Google documents are a great way to have students share written exercises. If you're going to be pairing students up in pairs or in small groups, think how you're going to do it. If you tell them to work with who they want, they'll always work with the same people. You know that. If you pair them with a person on their side, it will always be their friend. So you can do the person behind. Do you know, number off randomly, or, you know, count off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever. For me, a consideration is mother tongue. And I don't want all of the Chinese or all the Spanish-speaking students together, because then it's less likely they'll speak in English. So, you know, it's just something you need to think about before going to class. And then finally, if you decide to implement some of these, you know, read up on it. You know, there's a lot of websites out there. There's a lot of journal articles. You know, go to conferences like this one. Talk to colleagues who are doing it as well to see what works for them and get some other ideas. And then finally, there are a few resources that you can use that I have found particularly useful for clickers, for the online platforms, and also for videos as well. And that's it. 50 minutes on the dot. I was supposed to be 40, so I couldn't leave time for questions. But does anyone have any questions? Yes?
Yeah, I guess I do. I teach a 1-hour course, so I have 50 minutes.
Yeah.
I call it, it's advanced legal research, but it's basically remedial legal research. So I can't trust their base knowledge anything beyond. How long is your, I mean, if I had a 2-hour class, that would be a different story where I could, you know, have a 50 minutes to have them go over the material and 50 minutes for us to do the assignments. That would be very different. How long are your classes?
My classes are 2 hours. They were an hour and a half, and I increased it to 2 hours.
Yeah, that's, I would like that, I think that's a time factor is a big thing, because if I had 2 hours a week, that would, I think, would make a big difference.
But you could do smaller. I mean, it can be, smaller exercises as well. I mean, I think there could be.
I'm from St. Mary's, but they went in Texas.
Oh.
So I had a quiz at the first day of class. It amazes me the number of students in Texas who are Texas residents who have no idea when the legislature meets. Even when it's meeting, they don't know what year it's meeting. It's bicameral. They don't know that. It's very disappointing. So I basically, every year I do the same quiz, and every year I'm just hoping that some year it's going to be moved up. So I think you're right. It depends on the hours. If I had 2 hours, I would love to move that to a 2-hour class. And then I think it would be feasible. But as it is now, I do Lexis Westlaw, which I can't do in advance because they change from week to week. And I also throw in books because I try to persuade students that even though books are passé, they're also free. So I think you're right. The amount of hours you can do is really useful.
Any other questions? Yes.
What's your overhead in terms of, so to create your 35-minute video, you're writing the script, do you know what I'm saying? So clearly it must be more than the actual recording time. So how much time do you think you're spending?
I don't know. Now that it's longer because now I play with Camtasia and I look for videos and I do like fade in, fade out, and I'm doing music and all of this stuff, and that's just me. But I mean, really, I have, because I've been doing the same legal issues for the past few years. I have PowerPoints already prepared. So I'm not creating stuff by scratch, but I mean, I don't think it would be, if you were starting from scratch, I don't think it would be that much time if you're doing just a simple PowerPoint. Because you know what you want to say, it's just a question of writing up a script, rather than, if you wanted to, probably some people are better than not rambling than I can be. So, I don't know, maybe 3 hours for a half hour, maybe? Because I'm pretty good at, when I record them, when I used to record them with IT, I'd be pretty good about getting through it without stumbling and needing to restart too. Yes?
If in a typical class you're going to have the students read some cases prior to the class, and then in class you plan to synthesize them and deduce the rules, then what would your video look like that they would watch the night before without kind of giving away the game?
My video, we're doing promissory estoppel and contract formation first semester. So I have a video that introduces promissory estoppel and just explains what it was and what it is and kind of how it came about and the restatement standards, some of the different standards. We use Nebraska cases for it, so kind of introduce that. So it's just a general introduction to the legal topic. And other videos that I have one on office memos, just the general structure of office memos, one on plain legal English, one on persuasive versus predictive. So these are kind of the other topics that I have. But specifically that go with the cases, they're videos that are introducing that legal issue. Anyone else? Yes.
In that one slide, why did you say D was wrong?
Which one?
For the,
See, I didn't do what I'm supposed to do. You should go over all the incorrect answers. Oh, I have to get through them. Oh, wait, anyway, there. And which one?
the one where you enclosed, please find here, whatever.
Oh, I think that actually was a slide.
Legalese construction.
Oh, the one, that exercise that I did with my students?
Yeah.
Oh, the enclosed before, yeah, just kind of it's more of a preference of rather than enclosed, please find, just using a more direct, I am sending you.
It's surplus versus.
Just, exactly, just stylistic choices of eliminating excess.
Typical, but.
It's very typical, which
difficult
doesn't
to read.
mean it's the best, yeah. So I'm very much of Brian Garner, plain legal English. So that's, and I tell them, I said, you'll see it all the time. And I tell them that, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily the best or what I am suggesting that you do. And you know, many of them send me emails saying, Karen, enclosed herewith is my assignment. So, you know, so much for my exercises.
It's also kind of
But that's,
overly passive.
yeah. So those are the points that come up with that one. Yes?
So to make all these changes that you've done, obviously taking the initiative to do so, is this something you took upon yourself, or is this something that, hey, you should
No.
do this? Or you're like, hey, this is a lot of cool stuff out there, I want to change how I...
That it was just I wanted to do it myself.
See, I think
Yeah.
that's the battle, is that people don't want to...
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, seriously, it was that drive home from St. Mary's after that class where I said, I have to do something about this. Where, you know, just otherwise students are on their computers all the time. And from there, it's just kind of grown. But really, it was just, and it's also, it's a lot more fun for me. And, you know, to create these exercises, to see my students really enjoying them too. And really, the evaluations I get are really positive from the students that they like the exercises. The group discussions, sometimes they're nice to come. I still do them. And so that's really, it's just been a really personal journey to do it.
What about the colleagues that you work with? Have they adopted any of this?
There is one professor, Carol Chomsky is her name, who does some, she hasn't done the flipped classrooms, but she does more technology. And there are some professors at the law school that do. But certainly to the extent that I do it, I'm the only one. Yeah. It's still very lecture-based. Yes?
I've just heard many comments about the advantage of the flipped classroom, and I think it's hard to put your lecture on video because we all get a charge of the face-to-face, but students can stop it and re-listen to it and really absorb what you're trying to say. And taking notes, as we all have learned, on the computer, it's not being processed. And having it on video ahead of time lets them process it a little better. And then they do come to class knowing what you have said in your lecture. And then
Oh, better prepared. I was floored the first time I did the flipped classroom. I wrote this email to Carol Chomsky, this one professor, because I told her that I was doing the flipped classroom. I was like, Carol, I cannot believe the questions that I got from my students. They were sophisticated and just showed such a good understanding. So in that part of it, yeah.
Are you captioning your videos?
I don't. No, since I do they have the transcript.
Oh, so there's an actual transcript.
I now do a transcript.
Okay, so
yes.
that's equally good. But everyone who's doing video should be aware the Office of Civil Rights and the Department of Education is coming down very hard on accessibility issues, and if you're not addressing those, you need to be. And it's not just captioning. There are other issues involved as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah. No, I do the transcript, and I never thought of it for that reason. I just do it because my students are all ESL and don't understand everything. So, at least in my class, they understand everything, or at least the videos. Whether they understand everything in class is another matter. Yes?
What's your experience dealing with disruptive schedule changes, like weather events that you don't meet 1 week?
I
have to imagine it's better, but I'm just curious.
It is. I've never had that happen. I've never had to cancel class, knock on wood. I think you deal with it as you do with any other class. Try to make it up, and at least they get the videos, with the presentation and the lecture. Yeah, but that can create a problem with any class.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was better, worse, or same.
No, I've never had an
yet.
issue. Fortunately, never had a snow day or a blizzard that falls on the day that I have that class. Okay, thank you so much.